When a movie is fairly new, I try and do a spoiler-free section and then a spoiler section in a review. So that's what I'm going to do here. I will say the spoiler-free section is going to be fairly short because I don't have a ton to say about it without spoilers. But Black Adam, I actually went to see this movie earlier today when I'm recording this, and it's a little late. It's been out, I think, for 2 weeks or something like that now. And I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked this movie. Now, was it perfect? Is it the best superhero movie I've ever seen? Did it somehow redefine the genre? No, but I actually think that this was a very well-written and fun DC movie. I mean, honestly, you know when people say like, well, the MCU is supposed to be fun about like Marvel and stuff? That's how Black Adam felt to me. Like, this movie was just supposed to be fun. I didn't think it had bad writing. I didn't think that it blew anything out of the water either in terms of redefining stuff, but there was one major twist in this movie that I actually didn't really see coming because I don't know a ton about this character in the comics. My main experiences with the character of Black Adam have been an appearance here and there in comic books, along with the movie, I believe it's called Superman / Shazam, Return of Black Adam, and then, of course, this movie and Injustice 2. And we all know Injustice is not really a perfect representation of who any character is. Everybody is pretty different there. You know, like a soul of the character preserved, but a lot of different details and differences to their characterization. So for me going in, I didn't know a lot about Black Adam, except he's sort of this guy who's sometimes an anti-hero, sometimes he leans more villain, and he pretty much has the same powers as Shazam, who's a character I actually really like. So I went into this movie with not high expectations, but not low ones either, because one of the big things that this movie has been criticized for outside of the film is The Rock's promotion of it. Now, I don't really know why. Seems to me like the dude is just having fun promoting a movie that he's in, really getting into it and enjoying being a superhero or anti-hero, I guess. And I never had a problem with that. I always thought it was fun. I liked a lot of his pre-release interviews and thought that he seemed very, very invested in the movie. And I was very happy to walk out of the theater and see that investment. I didn't really encounter any characters in this movie who didn't seem like they wanted to be here. But one thing that really stole the show for me, aside from that, was Pierce Brosnan's part as Dr. Fate. I thought that this was really well done. I loved it to death, and I really hope they do more with this character in the future in terms of other movies, maybe some show kind of like they did Peacemaker, etc. If you've seen any of the trailers, it's really not a spoiler. The Justice Society or members of the Justice Society is in this movie, and I think overall that they did a good job with those characters. And one thing I like is that they got to shine a light on some lesser known characters in the movie. Unfortunately, this movie didn't do the best at the box office, which kind of bums me out. It's a little frustrating to see with DC that a lot of the times they get a lot of criticism for their movies, and sometimes that's deserved, but when they start taking that criticism into account, movies like this, right? Sometimes it seems like they fly under the radar and people still don't care. At which point I don't really understand what the point of the criticism was. You know, a lot of the point of the criticism with things like Man of Steel or Batman v Superman from general audience members was, this wasn't fun enough. I didn't have a good enough time. You know, it was very, very serious. There wasn't really any levity to this. And movies like Black Adam came out, and I thought that they balanced this seriousness with a fun and enjoyable tone very, very well. There are some jokes sprinkled throughout. Some of them are funny, some of them aren't, just the same way I feel about Marvel movies when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I never felt like it sold itself short and didn't take itself seriously just because it found ways to do a little bit of levity. It was very much fish out of water when it comes to Black Adam himself, with a lot of situational comedy, and I thought that that was for the most part very well written. There were a couple characters that I thought didn't necessarily need quite the amount of spotlight that they got. For example, one of the primary characters is a young boy who does not do a bad job. I understand why he's there, but I do think the writing around this character was a little odd. There's some very cheesy scenes with the character, and this movie does use a lot of slow motion, so if you're like me and you're a Matrix fanboy, you might get a kick out of that. If that really pisses you off, because I know some people don't like slow-mo at all, I get it. There is a lot of reliance on that in this movie. So without further ado, I'm going to get into spoilers here. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I really liked it. I don't think it's my favorite DCEU movie, but it's certainly up there, and I thought it was very, very solid and well done. It reminded me very much of the quality level of something like The Suicide Squad, at least to me. Now, while I will say that that project took more risks and did some different stuff more than Black Adam did, Black Adam is not really by the numbers either, at least to me. It didn't feel played out. It didn't feel like just superhero tropes. There was a lot of conflict and well done writing, and I enjoyed it. But let's hop into spoiler section. So if you, already didn't see this movie, might be time to skedaddle. But before you do, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I appreciate it very much. Now, getting into spoilers, I've got to say that one of the biggest bummers to me in this movie is Dr. Fate, because I loved Pierce Brosnan so much. And one of the things that they did with his character in this movie is sort of have him be a little bit more impartial. He's not fully siding with Hawkman, with Carter, despite being his good friend in the fight against Black Adam. He's still helpful, but also he's kind of willing to turn to him, to turn to Teth Adam when they need his help and actually get it, even though he's more of this anti-hero type character who is willing to kill people. And that's where a lot of the conflict of this movie comes in, is the killing itself. But when it comes to Pierce Brosnan, I thought that he did such a outstanding performance. Every time he was on screen, he really stole the show and captivated. I know me, my wife Jill who saw it, my friend Nate, and it just seemed like the audience in general would get quieter when Pierce Brosnan was on screen talking and doing stuff. He had almost a sense of melancholy peace about him that I thought was very interesting, and he seemed very wise and informed. And I thought that they did a very good job of this sagely magical figure in terms of this character. And what bums me out about that character in particular is that, again, spoilers, I know you left, you have no right to complain if you didn't. He dies, and his death is awesome. It's really cool, really well written, really well done, but it really left me wanting more of the character. And so because of that, it has no bearing on the story itself. It's not like this somehow negatively impacted the movie. In fact, I think it was probably best for the movie because it really made his character stand out just that much more. But it really made me want more, like another show, another movie, maybe a prequel, something like that. I don't expect them to bring him back to life, but maybe something that happened before, because we do find out that his character, Kent, actually had been, in service for a long, long time. And he talks about looking forward and seeing, the future for 100 years. And he talked about seeing soldiers when he was young go off to war, and how long he's lived and how he's been preserved essentially by this helmet, right? By being Dr. Fate. And I thought it was really cool to see this Justice Society element with him. So with a lot of those characters, I really hope we get to see more. I personally thought that the characters around Black Adam were just as strong as him, with one exception, which to me was kind of Atom Smasher. I know this character was supposed to be funny, and I am glad that he was included, because it's nice to see a spotlight drawn on characters that aren't necessarily always seen, especially because someone like the Atom already is not a household name, Atom Smasher being even less of one. So it was really cool and fun to see him on screen doing stuff, but I did feel a little bit like the character could have just not been there, and the movie would have been very close to the same as it was. Cyclone was a character I didn't expect to care about, but I thought she did a really good job. She had a surprisingly deep backstory, even though they didn't get fully into it, and I thought she played off the other characters very, very well. But when it came down to it, really the main characters kind of commanding the screen were Carter, Kent, and Teth. You had Hawkman, Dr. Fate, and Black Adam. And I thought they all really had a commanding presence that was very, very interesting, with Hawkman being another one that I didn't know what to expect with, but I thought he did a very good job. Probably the most interesting aspect to me of this movie is the idea of what is a hero, and a situational hero as well. Yes, you have the heroes like Batman and Superman, where they're pretty much trying to be the good guy all the time, but they do try and abide by not killing, right? They do try and abide by a set of rules. When it came down to it, Black Adam himself didn't do that. He didn't really obey a set of rules. He was very much more of like a vengeful spirit who still believed in justice and honor at the same time. And when he came into the movie, he didn't seem interested at all in anything going on. He wasn't really interested in being a hero. He wasn't really interested even in helping Kahndaq, especially once he found out how much time had passed. He had really no investment in it. But one thing that was really interesting to me that really played into who his character was the statue of the champion of Kahndaq from generations before, which also plays into one of the film's best narrative twists. I should say narrative devices, which was a twist, which was that Black Adam, this guy that we see summoned back to present day to actually defend Kahndaq, essentially, he wasn't really a champion. What he was an angry father. He wasn't someone who had been chosen by the Wizards to receive the power of Shazam. He wasn't someone who had been chosen by the Wizards to be a hero. His son had been chosen by the Wizards. And throughout the movie, the general audience is kind of led to believe that Black Adam is his son. Now, it sounds confusing, but near the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of exposition and setup, which I will say, by the way, that is a bit of a turnoff to some people. It was a lot of lore dumping at the very beginning. So if we want a criticism, I think that certainly probably could be one. There's like 5 to 10 minutes of just lore dumping and exposition dump on the audience at the very beginning. But in that exposition dump, they show who we believe Black Adam is as a child, yet later on we find out in a very interesting emotional moment of weakness between Carter and Teth that actually wasn't Black Adam. That wasn't Teth, who is Black Adam. Teth was the father of that child, who then had to watch his wife be slaughtered, and he was going to die as well, and his son, after many victories against oppression in Kahndaq, decided to sacrifice his power to save Teth's life, which actually turned him into Black Adam. Shortly after that, his son was killed, which was something really, really sad to see on screen, and something I don't think really anyone in the theater that I was at was expecting. And then, of course, Black Adam went on to attack the king and unleash his vengeance, and at that point he was sealed away by the Wizards because they hadn't chosen him anyway. They had chosen his son, and then when his son gave him the power, he immediately went and used it to vaporize a room full of people. Yes, they were tyrants, but to the Wizards, this was something that really showed it was an act of no mercy. He went into the Capitol and he obliterated everybody. He destroyed the entire building. He put a lot of people at risk around it. You also have to read into the fact that there were probably people caught up in the crossfire who died, who didn't deserve it. This king was a merciless dictator. I'm sure he had slaves and servants in his palace as well. Those people were also vaporized in Black Adam's rage. So to kind of see this rage and anger and all of this boiling up in this character who's now thrown into modern day and expected to be better than he was in the past, I thought was a very interesting story beat that played very well off of the staunch, very, very convicted black and white morals of the Justice Society of America. I really thought that this inner conflict with Black Adam and also external conflict of him sort of versus the Justice Society was a really interesting crux of the movie, because it's very much about an angry character with anger issues and a lot of darkness trying to overcome that to be the best person he can. However, he never crosses the line to Boy Scout and just becomes a super, super good dude who can do no wrong and shows all kinds of mercy. He still has this anger about him. It's just that he sort of learns to channel it better. It's not like we see a character go from a BVS level, killing enemies to all of a sudden like, I have faith, Alfred, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not even insulting that. It's a very big change, right? In someone like Bruce Wayne in that movie. It's not really anything like that. It's more like he goes from blindly lashing out and killing all kinds of people to much more precise and calculated moves that still end in the death of his enemies. And something I thought that was really cool about this movie because of that was that I think a lot of people went into a movie like Brightburn wanting to see, well, what are Superman's powers like when they're just unchecked, when they're unhinged, if some crazy person was using them. Something I liked about Black Adam is it's sort of like that. It's very much almost the Wolverine berserker rage of not holding back. However, it doesn't feel like it's done in, I don't want to say poor taste, but a ridiculous method that just seems over the top and done for shock value. Like, for example, we get to see Black Adam vaporize people, we get to see him fly around at supersonic speeds and catch missiles and bullets, we get to see him throw people up into the atmosphere practically and drop them. And yes, I'm sure it could have been more graphic, and I'm sure there's some people that would say that that adds realism, especially when we look at movies like Logan. But I don't really think that anything was lost here in the way that they portrayed these kills or these action scenes. It felt very tasteful to me and very well done. I still got the very, very clear impression that Black Adam was not the nicest person to ever walk the earth. He certainly is not a pacifist. However, I didn't feel like everything was just done for shock value and to overwhelm the audience in terms of, yeah, you saw Shazam, but what if Shazam was a serial killer? It doesn't really feel like that. It just feels like, what if somebody had the same powers as Shazam, but they were a lot more angry, they had experienced a lot more of their life beforehand, and they had a lot less to lose, and now they're dropped into the modern day and they're not even from that time. I thought that those things were all very well done. The effects to me looked good. I know sometimes people complain about DC special effects. Now we're at the point where everyone complains about Marvel's too, because of all the VFX drama around the VFX teams and them overworking people and stuff like that. And I will admit there has been some Marvel VFX that just look off, right? I didn't really notice things like that in Black Adam for the most part, and I think one of the main reasons for that is that there was practical mixed in with CGI, and I thought that it was well done. Like, yes, a lot of the destruction is CGI, very obviously. You can even see in behind the scenes photos, you know, there's blue screens, etc. They are recording in front of something that then is added into, right? That's just commonplace, especially in superhero movies. But Black Adam, for example, his suit, it wasn't just fully CGI'd on. At the very least, there was a base suit that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wore when he actually went out and performed. And something I don't think I mentioned enough that surprised me was the range of him in this movie. Because I think he gets a bad rap a lot of the times in terms of acting. I don't really know why. I don't think he has to be the most Shakespearean person of all time to be a fun, good actor. I've always liked him. But a lot of people criticize his acting and say he doesn't have a lot of range. He pretty much just plays The Rock. I didn't actually feel like that in this movie. I know some people did. I really didn't. I didn't feel like this was just The Rock with superpowers. This very much felt to me like a very intricate and deep character, at least for what this movie was. Because again, it's not the deepest movie ever. I've seen characters even in the DCEU where they get out there and it's pretty much just the actor. Something that bothered me with Will Smith's Deadshot is that I actually kind of believe that's what he brought to the table in a movie like Suicide Squad 1. It was Will Smith with a gun and a little bit more of an exaggerated accent and mannerisms. That was it. I didn't really get that from The Rock. Maybe the biggest criticism for his acting would be facial expressions, because people say he always looks stoic. But then again, this character is supposed to be very stoic. He's not going around cracking one-liners being super funny. Any comedy around him is pretty much just situational as a fish out of water. Overall, again, I really liked this movie. There's not a lot of complaints I have. Are there some things that I would have changed if I wrote it? Maybe. I think, for example, the villain was not the strongest. Sabak, he's fine. He's not really even in the movie that much, and the human counterpart that becomes Sabak, that becomes the champion for the demons, was kind of uninteresting to me. He just felt like a generic comic book villain or a generic, I don't know, superhero movie villain, almost like a Phase 1 Marvel villain, where they were just kind of there, and the superhero outshined them by a lot. And maybe that was more apparent here because there were so many good superheroes on the screen. My other criticism, I guess, that I never really got into too much, again, was Atom Smasher. I know comedy is subjective. I just didn't find a lot of the comedy around the character funny. I thought he was fine. Again, glad they shined a light on him and some lesser known characters, but I really walked away wanting more Black Adam, more Dr. Fate, and in sort of a final thought, I was very, very happy to see Henry Cavill return in the final minute or so of this movie in a post-credits sequence. This caught Jill and Nate off guard completely. I knew about it because if you're on social media and you don't see a movie 20 minutes before it's supposed to actually come out, the spoilers are all over the internet immediately, right? So I already knew he was back, but I can't say that it wasn't exciting to actually see him on screen. Now, I think it's too bad it didn't do better at the box office. I do hope that we get to see more of these characters as well, especially with the new regime with Warner Bros. But I guess even if we don't see too much more of Black Adam, as in like a whole nother movie, maybe we just see a pair-up movie with Superman or something like that, I really like what we got and I'm happy with it. I had fun, and at the end of the day, I don't have a lot of complaints. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you very, very much. I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.